Good morning. Happy June. We'll start out with reading some words of prayer that was written in 1514. Author unknown, but the words are still true. God be in my head and in my understanding. God be in my eyes and in my looking. God be in my mouth and in my speaking. God be in my heart and in my thinking. God be in my end and at my departing. Sort of covers all the basis of being with God, doesn't it? But it's easy to slip up and forget to be with God in this busy world we live in. We forget that we are to be with God always in fellowship. Luke 12:34 says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And Micah 6:8 says, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To walk justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." That's our priorities. Priority is something that's important to us, something that we care about. If something is important to us, then we will show that by our deeds. For instance, the Bible tells us that if our faith is truly important, we'll demonstrate that with our works. We know we're not saved by works, but if we have faith and we love God, we will have works. But if God is not our first priority, all other priorities will also fall short. I looked at a number of sources, and it claimed that there are 5 priorities for Christians. Now, you may disagree with the order of some of them, but they say it's God, family, church, country, and work. You may disagree a little bit, but at least the one should never change God. The number one always has to be God. In Matthew 33, it says, in the NIV Bible, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." In the New Living Translations, it says, "Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need." God will give us everything we need. But part of what it means to serve God is taking care of the needs of our country, our employer, our church, our family, and even ourselves. There's a German writer named Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, and he grasped the importance of priorities. He said, "Things which matter most must never be at the mercy of things which matter least." Too often we place priorities on things that may not be that important. We worry about things and try to get things done and run here and there, and often we neglect the serious things and trying to get the minor things done. Too often we make things on earth a priority instead of God. When God gave the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, his voice thundered out these words, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me." Exodus 20, verses 2-3. But too often we make things of this earth idols. Money, power, politics, hobbies, work. And we spend more time and energy on them than we do with God. I've heard people say for years that sports are killing the church. Now, I understand things have changed since I coached years ago and my kids played. Back when my kids played, we did nothing on Sunday. I was down at the ballpark for about 13 years, I was at the ballpark 6 days a week. But on Sunday, we didn't have games. We didn't have practice. If it rained and you had problems and you really needed to get a practice in and you had to do it on Sunday, you had to get permission from the league president. Now I understand things have changed. There's travel ball. There's so many sports, soccer and t-ball and little league and girls softball and all these sports. And there's our limited number of fields. And I understand, that he may have to play some on Sundays. And I understand travel ball. They try to do it on weekends because people work during the week. You know, a lot of times you can't take off and go on Tuesday and Wednesday to a kids tournament somewhere. But the thing of it is, you can be with God even on a ball field. I had a family that went to one of my churches, Pine Grove in Rollsburg, and they had 2 young boys that were very good athletes. In fact, one of them is a graduating senior from Southern High School in Oakland, Maryland this year, and he has signed a letter of intent, and next year he will be pitching for WVU Mountaineers. And his brother played second base on the Oakland baseball team as a freshman this year. They played ball. They got into travel ball, and they were gone a lot of Sundays during the ball season. But you know something? I saw Facebook posts and things. They had a father named Dwight who actually helped coach Oakland baseball team this year. And he was a very godly man. He was a lay speaker for me. And every time that they would go to a game on Sundays or any day, they would have prayer and devotion before the game. And they would invite the other team, and any other teams or parents that were around, they would invite them. And I saw many pictures of 10, 12, 15 kids sitting on a bleacher while Dwight read them from a Bible on Sunday. They had Sunday school before the ball game. And after the game, they invited the other team, and they went out and they had prayer. So even though they were somewhere at the Cal Ripken Experience in Aberdeen, Maryland, or maybe at a tournament down at Myrtle Beach, and they weren't physically in the church house on that Sunday, they had church. When I had when I first started out in Hampshire County, we had 6 churches. And on the 5th Sunday, we had what they called a 5th Sunday rally. And we didn't preach that Sunday. It was a relaxed Sunday, and everybody came, and each church did something different. One church may sing a couple hymns, may do a reading, whatever, but each church did a little something, and we would have a dinner. And one Sunday in the summertime, they decided that we wanted to go down to a place called Lake Ferndale, which is a little lake down there in Springfield. So that Sunday morning, all 6 of my churches, we gathered up in our vehicles, and we drove down to Lake Ferndale. And we had singing, devotions, prayer, burgers on the grill, potluck, and fishing. Now, we weren't actually in the church building that day, but we had church. We sat there and we enjoyed God's beauty, the lake and the trees and the birds singing. And the devotions were good that day, and the singing outdoors were good. And we gave God praise. And even though we weren't in any of the 6 church buildings, we had church that day. In today's world, there's times that we can't be in church. There's times we may not physically feel up to it. There's times we may be traveling for work. We may go on vacation. We may have different reasons we can't go. Maybe we have to babysit. You know, when my dad was with me, we had to have somebody with him 24 hours a day, and I had trouble trying to get people on Sunday, and I almost had to give up a Sunday of going to church and preaching to stay with Dad. And thank God I didn't. I had family that helped. But just because you're not in the church building on Sunday doesn't mean you can't worship God. Now, I know sports is a wonderful thing. It helps build lifelong friendships, and when we got these wonderful guys that give their time and women coaching, and we teach kids how to win and lose, and we teach them how to grow and have good sportsmanship. And it's a wonderful thing. And yes, sometimes they're not in church on Sunday. And by church, I mean the actual building. But you can still have church wherever you're at. When you go to a ball game or wherever you go. You know, we can't put God in a box. And we can't leave him stuck in our church buildings. What do we think God stays in our churches when we leave on Sunday and come home? No. Right here is where God lives, in our heart. Ever since Jesus died on that cross. Remember when Jesus talked to the Samaritan woman at the well in John 4? He basically told her that the worship of God is not about venues, sites, or structures, but about spirit and the truth. Out of John 4, verse 19, "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is of the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in the truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth." Worship is defined as a feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity, in our case, the only true God, Yahweh, our God. It says it's to honor with religious rites. The Bible says worship is the act of attributing reverent honor and homage to God, to acknowledge that God is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. A lot of things that we do should be worship. Any of our meetings, we don't like to go to meetings, and we're getting ready to have a bunch of them. It's getting close to church conference time where we got to have the nominating committee and the PPR meetings and the administrative council meetings and all the meetings we have to have. But it's worship. It's doing God's work. You know, worship is living lives in light of that truth, worshiping God in spirit. You know, most of our worship should be outside of the church building. There's 7 days in each week, 24 hours in a day. That equals out to about 168 hours a week. 168 hours. We spend about an hour and a half at church on Sunday. I do 3 churches, so I spend a little bit more time than that. But let's say you spend 2 whole hours at your church on Sunday. That leaves 166 hours in that week. Now, I'm not subtracting work hours or play hours or even sleep hours, because we're supposed to be with God all the time. How much of our week do we give God? How much of that 166 hours that we're outside the church walls do we actually give God? Sunday is not the only day to worship God. We are to have a Sabbath and to keep it holy. Let me give you something to think about. I want to read Matthew 26, verse 36 to 46. "Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, 'Sit here while I go and pray over there.'" If you don't recognize this, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's about to be betrayed and put on trial and taken to the cross. "And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, 'My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me.' He went a little further and fell on his face, and he prayed, 'Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will.'" Jesus was distraught. He knew what was coming. He knew how horrible it was going to be, but also he knew it was God's will for salvation. And he sweated blood in that garden, and he asked those disciples to be with him. Then he came to the disciples and found them asleep, and he said to Peter, "What? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if this cup cannot pass from me unless I drink it, your will be done." Jesus was living the righteous life. He did what he did for you and for I. I can't imagine how horrible it was, but he did it. He went away again a second time and he prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, take this cup," but he knew that he couldn't take it away from him. And he came and he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. So he left them, and he went away again, and he prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, he who betrays me is at hand. Jesus asked them to pray. He was in a state. We know what was going to come. We know what he went through at that trial, in the beating and the degradation and the pain and the suffering, and to be nailed to that cross. But think about this. The men who could not stay awake and pray 1 hour with Jesus at the greatest need and time of his life were the same men who had no trouble fishing all night long. Priorities matter. If you want to go to church, you will. If you want to make God a priority, you will. Because we always make time for what's important to us. Now I want to leave you with this one statement. Never forget that you were the most important priority Jesus had on that walk to the cross. And as he perished on that cross, you were his priority. Where are your priorities? God bless.